In this video tutorial, we will discuss how users will create CDFI certification market records, as well as CDFI certification accountable member records in the CDFI Fund's Awards Management Information System, otherwise known as AMIS. The functions in AMIS that entities use to present CDFI certification market components and organization board member for the target market and accountability criteria were updated in connection with the revised CDFI certification application. This video tutorial supplements the CDFI certification AMIS submission guide and the supplemental guidance published on the CDFI Fund's public website. I want to show folks here that once we're at the CDFI certification webpage on our CDFI Fund's public website, if you go down to how to apply, both these steps, the step 1 webinars and the step 2 apply, will include very helpful information to prepare users on how to submit a CDFI certification application. The step 1 is webinars. You can click on webinars and access various content such as the one that you're watching right now. And if you click on step 2, apply, you can access application materials. Here we have a plethora of various announcements, and we have application materials. I want to point out that the CDFI certification supplemental guidance and tips document is a required guide that the CDFI Fund imposes on applicants in preparing the applications. So CDFI certification applications have various data fields that will utilize the supplemental guidance and tips manual in order to give applicants the information and the context and clarification that they need in order to submit a successful and accurate application. Since this video tutorial seeks to present updated features and AMIS connected to the CDFI certification application, let's review at a higher level an explanation of the two relevant CDFI certification criteria. To meet the target market requirements, an entity must direct at least 60% of both the number and dollar volume of all eligible financial product transactions it closes during a full 12-month fiscal year to an eligible CDFI certification target market. Along with the target market directed financing activity, a certified CDFI must demonstrate accountability to its allowed CDFI certification target market components by having a sufficient level of accountable individuals on its relevant governing and/or formal advisory board. For CDFI certification purposes, entities must create CDFI certification market records in AMIS to represent each component of the proposed CDFI certification target market. Please note here, and this will be relevant later in this webinar, or this tutorial, I should say, if applicable, entities must also create CDFI certification market records in the AMIS account for each affiliate or other entity relevant to its CDFI certification collective review to represent the presented collective review market components in connection with the target market and accountability test for a collective review entity. A CDFI certification accountable member record must be created in the applicant's AMIS account on the relevant organization board member pages to convey the source of accountability to the applicable proposed target market components. In the first section of this video tutorial, we're going to describe the CDFI certification market record naming convention that is required by the CDFI Fund. Before we create market records in AMIS, let's first cover the expected naming convention required by the CDFI fund for market records. There's information related to this in the required this required naming convention and the other required CDFI certification supplemental guidance and tips manual. There are two aspects that build the CDFI certification market record naming convention. We have target market type and number. The format, as you see on the screen, is such that you have the aspect 1, target market type, separated by an underscore that leaves us with the number, the second aspect of the naming convention. I want to explain what each of these naming convention aspects mean separately. The target market type is the relevant type that represents a component of the CDFI applicant's proposed CDFI certification target market, e.g. LITP or low-income targeted population, investment area pre-qualified, customized investment area, other targeted population, Native American, etc. The number is the second aspect of the naming convention, and this represents a records place in what might ultimately be a sequence of records presented to the CDFI fund for the exact same market component. For example, 1 would be used for the first time a market component is presented. 2, if that same exact market component is presented a second time in connection with perhaps an amendment to the overall target market. And 3, if it's presented a third time in connection with a subsequent amendment to the overall target market component. Also, the sequencing or the number is relevant. Perhaps if an application is denied and the entity wants to reapply for certification, they would then use a 2 because of the first time you would use a 1, it's denied, and then there will be a second. Let's create a name of the example CDFI certification market record that we will use throughout the rest of this tutorial. Let's create a low-income targeted population record for an entity applying for CDFI certification for its first time under the revised CDFI certification application. Our test entity is going to create an LITP, so it's abbreviated low-income targeted population. We're going to separate that with an underscore. And since this is the first time in what might ultimately be a sequence of chances that this entity would need to take to present this record to the CDFI fund, we're going to use 1 here to identify that in the last aspect of the naming convention. So the name of the CDFI certification market record that we're going to use as an example throughout the rest of this tutorial is going to be LITP underscore 1. In this next section of the tutorial, we will present the process by which users will create new CDFI certification market records in AMIS. To create new CDFI certification market records in AMIS, the user must access the relevant entity's organization detail page. We're going to say our test organization here for this video tutorial is test applicant org 25. So we are here in this particular organization's detail page. Let's select the related tab and scroll down to the CDFI certification market related list. Here we are, CDFI certification markets. We're now going to select on the new feature towards the right. This is going to open a new CDFI certification market record creation window. Here under the information header, we will see 5 different data fields that any user must complete in order to save this record. I should actually revise that last statement and say not all of these 5 a user must complete in order to save the record, but there are 5 relevant data fields to a user that would be completing the record. Let's get into it. It'll make more sense once I explain it. The market name. In this data field, users must input the record name for the relevant target market component using the naming convention that was outlined previously in this video tutorial. So let's input our example here. We have LITP underscore 1 because we're proposing an low-income targeted population for this entity's first time. Second relevant data field is the organization. The entity's AMIS organization record should automatically be linked here, and we see it is. So awesome. And that's this particular field here. Next, we're going to look at record purpose. Here, we're going to select the purpose for the record. If you're creating a CDFI certification market record for the CDFI certification applicant itself, then this own certification should be selected. If you're creating a CDFI certification market record for an entity relevant to the CDFI certification collective review, the CDFI certification collective review for another entity will be selected. If you're creating a market record for the purposes of seeking the Native American CDFI designation, then that market record would be selected. But there's going to be another webinar specifically about that and creating those particular records. In this example, we are an applicant applying for CDFI certification for the first time, seeking to propose a LITP target market component. So we're going to select CDFI certification own certification. Next, we have target market type or market type. Select the proposed market type from the pick list of options that include types like investment area, other targeted populations, etc. In this case, we're going to select low-income targeted population. The last relevant data field is entity subject to the collective review. This data field is only relevant when the CDFI certification collective review for another entity is selected in the purpose field. Here, users will link the primary applicant applying for CDFI certification to the connected market record that's being created. We don't have to worry about these data fields that are underneath the review section of this record creation window. That's going to be specific for CDFI fund staff. To finish creating this record, we're going to click Save. Please note if users are entering information about multiple target market components, you may select the Save and New option and enter in information about your organization's next component. In this case, we're just going to click Save. We see now that a new CDFI certification market record has now been created. So now click on this record. We're now in the record that we just created. If we need to edit it, oh, and I should point out here, we see that the data fields that came from that information underneath that information heading appear right here on this record. we need to edit any of the information we input, we'll just click this edit button, and then we can now edit the same field that the same record creation window that we previously used. If you need to clone this record, you may select clone, and all the information would be automatically populated here to save, and it will create a clone of this record. If you need to delete this record, you may select delete, which I'm not going to do in this case. Then if you drop down, you can print this record out. And this change status field is going to be an important field. We're just going to come and really address that later when we're linking this record into our CDFI certification application. As we should be aware, CDFI certification accountable member records must be created in CDFI's AMIS accounts on the relevant organization board member pages to convey sources of accountability to the proposed market components. In this section of the video tutorial, we intend to present the process by which users will create CDFI certification accountable member records in AMIS. It's important to be clear that the data fields displayed in the CDFI certification market accountable member record creation windows that we will see in the next bit of this video tutorial, these are going to be different depending on which market records are being created, or which target market types are being proposed, I should say, and which sources of accountability are being presented. So in other words, if we're presenting somebody as a low-income individual for their source of accountability to a low-income targeted population, users will be posed separate questions specifically related to that particular source of accountability. And a small business owner that primarily employs residents of qualified census tracts within a customized investment area will then be poised to respond to separate sources of accountability questions. I just wanted to explain these caveats before we got into this next section, but let's get going. Alrighty, so to create new CDFI certification accountable member records, you're going to go to the related list and scroll down. Oh, excuse me. So scroll down to the organization board related list. We're going to select the relevant board record that we created for which the relevant board member is or has a position. If we select this related tab, you'll see a related list of all the board members on the particular organization board. In this example, we're going to select the organization board member. That will take us to an organization board member record. In the relevant organization board member record detail page, select the new CDFI certification accountable member feature at the top right of the window. In the CDFI certification accountable member record creation page, let's cover which data fields users should input information relevant to their entity's CDFI certification target market. As I maneuver across the various relevant data fields, I will input information from an example board member. The first one we see is target market. Here we're going to look up any CDFI certification market record created in the organization's detail page that has an in progress status. So right now it's showing is this recent one that I created. because I just recently created that one. However, if the relevant market record is not appearing for your entity when you're using this search tool, you may type the name and select this Show More Response. Then you should be able to see it. The market records that will appear here are only market records that are in this in progress status. So if you're trying to link a CDFI certification accountable member record to a to a market record that has been proposed already, rejected, approved, etc., it won't show up here. So don't go looking for it, essentially. Make sure that the record that you are trying to find here is in this in progress status. So we're going to select it. This will automatically link the record to this particular accountable member record. I should be a little bit more specific. Let me revise that last statement. This should link the CDFI certification market record to this CDFI certification accountable member record. Let's go to the next data field. Here we are selecting from a pick list of options the particular target market type for which this particular board member is accountable. Here we're going to select low-income targeted population because that's our example. We're going to click Next to continue to complete the new CDFI certification accountable member record creation process. At this point in the video tutorial, it's important to be clear, and this harkens back to my caveat at the beginning of this section. The data fields displayed in the remaining pages of the new CDFI certification accountable member record creation window will differ depending on the relevant target market types and the sources of accountability that users have selected. The purpose of this section of the video tutorial is to present the functionality of the process by which a user should convey the relevant information in connection to CDFI certification. Users must seek information from the CDFI Certification Supplemental Guidance and Tips Manual, which the CDFI Fund requires applicants to use when preparing the CDFI certification applications. This will provide greater context behind the data fields displayed on the new CDFI certification accountable member record creation windows as it pertains to various sources of accountability. Let's input relevant information from the example CDFI certification target market component that we're using throughout the rest of this video and as we already demonstrated in the last two sections. So we're going to select low-income individual as a potential source of accountability for this board member. Then we're going to select next. We're going to answer all of the source of accountability specific questions. Again, these questions that are posed will differ depending on the particular source of accountability or target market type that are selected in the previous windows that we saw on the screen. Once we're finished responding to all of the CDFI certification accountable member record creation questions, the record creation window will disappear and you'll see that particular accountable member record in AMIS. I mention in AMIS because this particular accountable member record will now appear in 3 different places. In the organization board member record itself, if you select the Related tab, you may see that CDFI certification accountable member record. If we need to make an edit for this particular record, you can select the record detail page itself. As you see, all of these records are hyperlinked. You can go to edit, and it will allow you to input that same exact information within this record creation window to edit this particular record. I want to take a few moments to explain what's going on in this CDFI certification accountable member page. At the top, we should see the record identifier. It should see the connected CDFI certification market record, the connected organization board record, the board member, and then there will be data fields that display the type that the board member is presented for, the target market type that the board member is presented for. As you scroll down underneath this target market section, you can see which sources of accountability are selected. Here we have 4 different types of accountability. When you have sources of accountability related to investment area, target market types, they'll be displayed right in this field. Since in this example, we're talking about LITP, the particular source of accountability is going to be displayed in this field. If your entity is proposing any of the OTP target market types, their sources of accountability will be displayed in this field. And if your entity is seeking the Native American designation, then the sources of Native accountability will be displayed here. If you want more information into the evidence that that particular board member is accountable or maintains that source of accountability, you can go to the relevant header for the market type that is being presented. In this case, we went down to low-income targeted population, and we can see the question or the answer to the question that was posed in the record creation window, which if you were reading, it was we have the source of accountability be a low-income individual. They asked whether or not we, as an organization, verified this board member's income status using a pre-approved target market assessment methodology for LITP, and we responded yes, so that field is shown right here, or that answer is shown right here. Again, if you are in a situation where you input information into the record creation window and you now are, upon viewing this, you need to edit, you may select this edit feature at the top right of the screen. If there are multiple target market for which multiple target market components for which a board member is accountable, or perhaps the board member might have similar sources of accountability to the same target market component, you likely will have to create as many relevant CDFI certification accountable member records for each source of accountability or to each target market component. Once users have created CDFI certification market records to represent a component of the CDFI certification target market, as well as linked all the relevant accountable board member records or the CDFI certification accountable member records to these particular market records, users must link the CDFI certification market record to its entity's CDFI certification application. This last section will show users how to link their target market records to the CDFI certification application template. The first step in this process involves putting the particular market record into a record complete / ready for submission status. So we're going to say theoretically that we input all and linked all the relevant organization board members to this particular target market component that is being presented in AMIS. So let's just say that's the state here. We're going to click on the related tab and scroll down to the CDFI certification markets related list and we're going to select the CDFI certification market record that is now complete and it has all of the relevant linked accountable members. In this case, we can see we have one accountable member from the data field, and it is this person that we just created, this board record that we just created. I'm sorry, I meant to say accountable member record that we just created. I apologize. Okay, but we can see that the status is in progress for this particular market record. We can't link any in progress market records into the AMIS CDFI certification application template. So what we need to do is put it into record complete and ready for submission. Here's how we do that. We're going to go to the top right of the screen. Depending on how expanded your internet browser is, you're going to select this drop down, or you're just going to select the option that says change status. Here, it'll allow you to set the market record into a record complete ready for submission. This kind of locks it in and lets the CDFI fund know that you are finished with this particular market record and you're ready to upload it into your application. If ever you need to edit this field again, you can switch the status right back to in progress, and then after that, you can edit. But we're not going to do that for the purpose of this walkthrough. Once we have all of the relevant CDFI certification market records in a record complete, ready for submission status, we're ready to link this into our application. So we're going to go to our organization detail page, click on the related tab again, but this time scroll down to program profiles. Here we are. The hyperlinks within this related list will bring users to detail pages. We want to select the CDFI cert program profile detail page. Once we're in here, we're going to select this related tab and we're going to click to access the application that we've already launched. In this example, this is just a new application. There is less progress on it than users may have when they're doing this in practice. Once the CDFI certification application is open, we're going to use the menu on the left-hand side. We're going to navigate to the target market subsection. I should say, we're going to navigate to target market subsection, which is in the target market section of the application. Here in the target market section of the application, you're going to identify the proposed target market type. In this example, we're using a low-income targeted population. And then in the field TM01.1, we are going to search for our record complete and ready for submission target market record. Oh, it's there. It's LITP_1. After you respond to the various data fields, you'll be able to save this record into this particular page of the application. Voila! We've successfully created a CDFI certification market record. We've linked CDFI certification accountable member records to that market record. And now we've linked the market record into the CDFI certification application template. This video tutorial is meant to supplement the guidance information conveyed in both the CDFI certification application AMIS submission guide, as well as the CDFI certification supplemental guidance and tips manual, which the latter of which is required use when you're submitting an application. Please utilize these resources in completing the revised CDFI certification application. We hope that this video tutorial was helpful in preparing CDFI certification market records.